Why would Jesus choose the devil to disciple? I mean, God knows the devil's job is to steal, kill, and destroy. And if God is a loving God, then why would he let Satan do that and then even disciple him? That's what we're going to figure out today. John 6:64 says, Jesus says, however, there are some of you who do not believe. For Jesus had known from the beginning which of them did not believe and who would betray him. At that point, many disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. And Jesus asked if the 12 wanted to leave too. And Peter asked where were they going to go? They were in it for the long haul. They were ready. They were focused. They knew the purpose. So then Jesus replied in John 6:70 through 71. He said, have I not chosen you, the 12? Yet one of you is a devil. He was speaking about Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. For although Judas was one of the 12, he was later to betray Jesus. So what happened? Well, we're going to go back in time. Way, way, way back in time. We're actually going to go back to 6 days before Passover. Jesus is at the house of Lazarus and Mary and Martha. And if you remember, Martha was busy running around, acting all crazy, trying to get stuff done. And she was mad because Mary was laying at the feet of Jesus just listening to him. And she kept yelling at him and asking him to come, and she didn't. She just stayed there. And Jesus told her that there's a time to work and a time to rest. And Mary knew something in her spirit told her that this was a time to just hang with Jesus and just be there. So Mary's laying at his feet, and then she takes her perfume and she uses it to wipe Jesus's feet. And then Jesus, in John 12:4 through 6, it says, but one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who is going to betray him, asked, why wasn't this perfume sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor? Judas did not say this because he cared about the poor. He said it because he was a thief. As a keeper of the money bag, he used to take from what was put into it. So we can see here that John doesn't really care too much for Judas. But Judas was frustrated because a day's wage was 1 denarii. And here she was pouring this perfume, this expensive perfume that was almost a year's worth of wages on Jesus's feet, and then wiping it with her hair. But it wasn't because he was mad about the money being wasted. It was because he was mad because he couldn't keep it for himself. So then Judas has this feeling inside of him. And John 13:2 says, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So Judas goes and he seeks the chief priests. And in Matthew 26:14 through 16, it says, then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asked, what are you willing to give me to hand him over to you? And they set out him 30 pieces of silver. So from then on, Judas looked for an opportunity to betray Jesus. See, John 13:2 tells us that Satan already put it in Judas's heart to betray Jesus. Judas doubted Jesus. And just like Bishop talked about a couple Sundays ago, we have to contend with the faith. We have to compete for it. See, Judas didn't try to understand Jesus' message. He was a disciple chosen by God through Jesus. He must have at least been a little bit curious if he came up to him. But there was something inside of him that made him want to follow. But that wasn't strong enough. That wasn't deep enough for him to outcompete with Satan over his heart. He left an opening for Satan to sneak in and allow the doubt and discontent to grow. That could happen to any of us. If we don't fight and contend with the faith or for the faith, then at any time, any given moment, we can just let it all go. And we can allow Satan to get little sneaky little holds onto us and give us doubt and make us think that maybe it's not maybe it's not right, maybe it's not good, maybe it's not what we're supposed to be doing, maybe it's not. We have all these maybe it's nots because we've allowed Satan to put a little doubt into us, and we have to contend with that. We have to fight with that. We have to fight for God to be in our heart and to fill us and to guide us and strengthen us. So let's move to John 17:12. And Jesus is praying at the Last Supper after telling them for the last time that he will die and they will all be sad. He prays for his mission. He prays for his disciples. And in that he says, while I was with them, I protected and preserved them by your name, the name you gave me. Not one of them has been lost, except the son of destruction, so that the scripture could be filled. See, Jesus knew the scripture had to be filled, and he knew there were certain things that had to be in place in order for that to happen. So then Judas betrays Jesus, and he sees in his moment of despair, because he realizes the consequences of his choice. He realizes that Jesus was condemned, and he comes to his senses and he changes his mind. He tries to stop the chief priests and return the money to them, but they refuse them. He throws the money back at them, and then he's so remorseful, he hangs himself. The chief priests refuse to use the money for the church and buy a field to bury foreigners, criminals, and the poor. Can you imagine being the one who will forever be remembered as the thief, the person who betrays his friends? Judas's name is forever tainted by this one choice. This choice, probably out of anger, probably out of frustration, to betray him. And now, anytime somebody betrays a friend, oh, you're being a Judas. Oh, you're a Judas, huh? That's forever given. No matter what he's done in the past, that's his forever tainted name. But we can't forget that Judas was chosen for the time to fulfill the scripture. I mean, yes, he did bad to Jesus. Yes, he betrayed Jesus. But for us to have everlasting life, for us to be able to be forgiven. So maybe, just maybe, it's not always bad. See, in Zechariah 11:12-13, it says, then I said to them, if it seems good to you, give me my wages. But if not, keep them. See, this was already the negotiation for the money. What are you willing to give me to betray Jesus? And they weighed out as my wages 30 pieces of silver, which is exactly what they offered him. Then the Lord said to me in verse 13, throw it to the potter, the lordly price at which I was priced by them. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord to the potter. You see, Jesus knew, because a prophecy had already been told. This prophecy was foretold 6 centuries before Jesus' birth. 600 years before Jesus was born, this was already said that this money was going to be used to betray. That this money was then going to be thrown back at the church, at the chief priests. And yet, they were going to use it for the potter field. The potter's field was specifically for, and this is Old Testament talking, for a special area for foreigners and the poor and criminals to be buried, so that there was a place for them to be buried as well. Like a cemetery, a free cemetery. And that's exactly what the money was then used for. The chief priests knew they couldn't put that money back in the plate because it was blood money. So they bought this field so that foreigners and those could be buried there. This prophecy was fulfilled when Jesus chose Judas. And then when Judas chose to allow Satan to invade his heart and his thoughts, was all for the prophecy. So why would Jesus choose the devil to disciple? So that we could have everlasting life. But the other message that we have to learn from this is we have to be really, really careful with who or what we're allowing to speak into our lives. Who are we watching? Because sometimes they can bring us to a place that can leave a little space for Satan to sneak in and attack us or make us doubt the truth. We have a big competition of spirit, God, and flesh, what we want, feel, or think. And Satan wants to steal that away from us. We have to be ready for the competition and the fight so that we don't make decisions that we will later regret. But the beautiful thing is that Jesus gave his life for our forgiveness. So that when we do make mistakes, that's not the end. But that's not an excuse to choose to do the wrong things. We have to remember, and when we do make mistakes, in our heart knowing that it's not the end of the world, that God will forgive us, that through Jesus we are forgiven. But we can't just use that as a reason to make mistakes. We have to continue to fight and try and do our best to not make those mistakes so that we can grow stronger in our faith and we can grow stronger in God and in our relationship with him. And then at the end, we have some questions that I just want you to think about. Some food for thought. Have you ever done something or said something that you think may have been negative or doubtful that may have left a hole or an opening for Satan to sneak in? And if so, what could you do to make sure that doesn't happen again? Think about some ways that you can move forward and grow and make that mistake not happen again, but also to be a life lesson. The second question I asked was, sometimes bad things happen as part of God's ultimate plan of salvation for others. Can you think of a time something bad happened, but then later you realized that it turned out to be a really good thing? And the last question, what are some ways we can contend for God and strengthen ourselves spiritually and mentally so that we can grow stronger in him? That's all I got for you. Have a great day.